The telegram said he'd be waiting. It didn't say he'd be dead. Gwen Richardson stepped off the train in Dodge City with empty pockets and a promise that had turned to ash, until a rancher with kind eyes bought her supper and changed everything.
Hello, compliments of the season. If you love heartwarming stories about life in times past, then you'd enjoy these stories. Comment where you're watching from, like and share these videos with loved ones as you enjoy them. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel too. My team and I have something free and beautiful for you once we hit the 1,000 subscriber mark. It will be shared in the community. You know, we go to great lengths to make these stories, and your support means a lot to us. Therefore, we plan to give back to you once we are able to. So be a part of what we are building.
The telegram said he'd be waiting. It didn't say he'd be dead. Gwen Richardson stepped off the train in Dodge City with empty pockets and a promise that had turned to ash, until a rancher with kind eyes bought her supper and changed everything. The wind howled across the Kansas prairie when Gwen Richardson arrived in Dodge City on Christmas Eve, 1882. She clutched a worn carpet bag and a telegram from Thomas Kemp, the cattle broker who'd promised marriage and a fresh start. But Kemp was 3 days buried, killed in a stampede outside Cimarron. With no family, no money, and winter closing in fast, Gwen stood alone on the platform, watching families disappear into the lamplight. Then rancher Cody Walton, dusty from the trail, saw her swaying on her feet and did something simple that would bind their fates forever. The cold hit like a fist when the train doors opened. Gwen stepped down onto the platform, her boots crunching on frozen mud mixed with snow that had been trampled into slush by 100 other arrivals. Around her, Dodge City churned with Christmas Eve chaos. Cowboys in from the range, families collecting parcels, children shrieking as they chased each other between wagon wheels. She stood still, scanning faces for Thomas Kemp. Tall, he'd written, dark beard, I'll be wearing a brown coat and holding my hat. No one held a hat, no one looked her way. The platform emptied slowly. One by one, people found who they'd come for and disappeared into the blue-gold twilight. The station master locked the ticket window with a sharp click that echoed across the boards. Gwen checked the telegram again, though she'd memorized every word. Arrival confirmed, December 24. Will meet train, Thomas Kemp. But Thomas Kemp was nowhere. She had $6 left. The ticket from Pennsylvania had cost everything else. A man approached from the shadows near the freight office, older, weathered, with a badge catching the last light. "You waitin' on someone, miss?" "Thomas Kemp," Gwen said, hating how small her voice sounded. The marshal's face changed. "Ah, you're the bride." Something in his tone made her stomach drop. "Where is he?" "Cemetery, miss. 3 days now." He removed his hat. "Stampede out near Cimarron. Caught him and 2 other men. I'm real sorry." The world tilted. Gwen gripped her carpet bag tighter, nails digging into the leather. "He's dead?" "Yes, ma'am. Happened fast, if that's any comfort." It wasn't. The marshal shifted uncomfortably. "You got family? Someone to wire?" "No." The word came out flat. "True." "Money for a room?" She hesitated too long. "Right." He cleared his throat. "Look, there's a boarding house on 3rd Street, Mrs. Talbot's place. She might—" "I'll manage," Gwen said, though she had no idea how. The marshal nodded, clearly relieved to be dismissed from her tragedy, and walked away. Gwen stood in the growing dark, watching her breath fog in the cold. $6. Maybe enough for 3 nights' lodging, if the rates were low. After that, nothing. She started walking, no destination, just movement to keep the panic at bay. The main street glowed with lamplight. Saloons roared with fiddle music and laughter.
The smell of roasting meat drifted from a restaurant called the Cattleman's Rest. Her stomach cramped so hard she had to stop, one hand pressed to the wall of the general store. When had she last eaten? A biscuit on the train yesterday morning. She'd saved the rest, planning to arrive fresh-faced and capable, not half-starved and desperate. Through the restaurant window, she saw families eating, plates of steak and potatoes, steam rising, faces warm with conversation and safety. And at a corner table, alone, a man with broad shoulders and sun-darkened skin, cutting his food with the careful attention of someone who'd worked for every bite. His hat sat on the chair beside him. His coat, though dusty, was well mended. She didn't mean to stare, but hunger makes you shameless. Their eyes met through the glass. Gwen turned quickly, shame flooding her face. Behind her, the door opened. "You waitin' on someone?" His voice was low, steady, not unkind.
Gwen turned slowly. Up close, he was younger than she'd thought, maybe 35, with lines around his eyes from squinting into prairie sun. His gaze was direct but not invasive, the kind that saw without judging. "No," she said, because it was the truth. He studied her for a moment, the thin shawl, the carpet bag that had seen better years, the way she held herself like a person trying not to break. "You hungry?" Pride warred with desperation. Pride lost. "I don't have money for supper." "Didn't ask if you did." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the warmth inside. "Kitchen made too much, like always. Be ashamed to waste it." Gwen hesitated. In Pennsylvania, accepting food from strange men led to expectations. But this wasn't Pennsylvania, and she was past the point of options. "Thank you," she said quietly. Inside, heat wrapped around her like a blanket. Her fingers tingled painfully as blood returned to them. The man, she still didn't know his name, pointed to a table near the stove. "Sit anywhere." He returned to his own meal without another word, giving her space. Within minutes, the owner brought a plate, beefsteak, carrots glazed with butter, potatoes still steaming, and half a loaf of bread. Gwen stared at it, throat tight. She ate slowly at first, then faster, the food solid and real in a way nothing had felt since the marshal's words in the cold. When her plate was clean, the man spoke from across the room. "You come in on the evening train?" "Yes." "For Thomas Kemp?" Her hand stilled on the empty coffee cup someone had brought. "You knew him?" "Not well. Bought cattle from him twice." He paused. "I'm sorry about what happened." Gwen set the cup down carefully. "I never met him. We only wrote letters." The admission felt like peeling back skin, but lying seemed worse. "Now I'm here, and he's not, and I don't know what comes next." The man was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Name's Cody Walton. I've got a ranch outside Spearville, 20 miles west. Could use help with cooking, mending. My foreman's wife is going blind and needs a steady hand. It's honest work. Room and board, fair wages." Gwen looked up sharply. "Why would you offer that to a stranger?" Cody met her eyes. "Because someone helped me once when I had nothing. Figured I'd pass it forward." She searched his face for deception, for the catch that always came with charity. Found only steady, worn-down honesty. "I'll work hard," she said. "I believe you will." Outside, snow began to fall, soft and silent, covering Dodge City in white. Gwen watched it through the window, and for the first time since stepping off that train, she let herself breathe. Not saved, not yet, but not alone. What happens when Gwen arrives at Cody's ranch, when the rumors start spreading, when the past she fled and the future she's building collide? This is only the beginning. Subscribe to follow Gwen's journey from desperate stranger to the woman who'll fight for her place in the unforgiving Kansas prairie, and discover whether two broken people can build something whole. They left Dodge City before dawn, the wagon rattling over frozen ruts as the prairie opened around them like an empty promise. Gwen sat beside Cody, carpetbag at her feet, watching the horizon swallow the last of the town's lights. He didn't talk much, just drove, hands steady on the reins, occasionally pointing out landmarks. That's Miller's Creek, dries up come July. Those hills there, that's where the Cheyenne trails used to run. By the time the sun broke over the grassland, they'd reached Spearville, barely a town, just a handful of buildings clustered around a trading post and a church with a crooked steeple. Ranch is another 5 miles, Cody said. It appeared gradually, a low house with a stone chimney, a barn weathered gray by wind, fences that needed mending, and beyond it all, prairie stretching endlessly under a sky so big it hurt to look at. An older couple waited on the porch. The man was lean and bow-legged, his face creased like old leather. The woman beside him squinted in Gwen's direction, her eyes clouded white at the edges. "Floyd and Bertie Hatch," Cody said, pulling the wagon to a stop. "They keep this place from falling apart." Floyd nodded once, sizing Gwen up with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen plenty of people pass through. "You the girl from the train?" "Yes, sir." "She's here to help, cooking, mending, whatever Bertie needs." Bertie stepped forward, feeling her way along the porch rail. "Can you bake bread?" "Yes, ma'am." "Can you handle a needle without stabbing yourself?" "Most days." A smile cracked across Bertie's weathered face. "Then you'll do just fine." The house was small but solid. 2 bedrooms, a main room with a stone hearth, a kitchen that smelled of old smoke and coffee. Bertie showed her to a narrow room off the kitchen, barely more than a closet with a cot and a window facing east. "It's not much," Bertie said. "It's more than I had yesterday," Gwen replied. That first week passed in a blur of work. She learned the rhythm of the ranch. Breakfast before dawn, chores that never ended, supper by lamplight. Cody was gone most days, checking cattle or mending fence. Floyd taught her how to churn butter and split kindling without losing a finger. Bertie, despite her failing eyes, knew the kitchen by touch and memory, guiding Gwen through bread making like a hymn she'd sung 1,000 times. It might have been peaceful, except for the wagon that appeared on the 3rd day. Vernon Moss stepped down, dressed too fine for ranch country, his smile sharp as barbed wire. "Heard Cody took in Kemp's bride. Interesting timing, wouldn't you say?"
Vernon Moss didn't wait for an invitation. He walked straight to the porch where Gwen was hanging laundry, Bertie nearby, shelling peas by feel. "Miss Richardson, is it?" His voice was smooth, practiced. "I'm Vernon Moss. I was Thomas Kemp's business partner." Gwen set down the wet sheet, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mr. Moss, I apologize for not meeting you in Dodge City. Didn't know you'd arrived until the marshal mentioned it." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Must have been quite a shock learning about Thomas. It was. And yet here you are, landed on your feet rather quickly. Something in his tone made her spine stiffen. "Mr. Walton offered work. I accepted. Of course. Moss glanced toward the barn where Cody was shoeing a horse. "Thing is, Miss Richardson, Thomas and I own property together. Grazing lease up near Cimarron. Valuable land. And before he died, Thomas mentioned you quite a bit in his letters. We were engaged to be married. Were you?" Moss pulled a folded paper from his coat. "See, I've been going through Thomas's affairs, and I found something curious. No formal contract. No witnessed agreement. Just letters." He paused. Letters that got increasingly intimate, almost like someone knew exactly what to write to distract a man. Gwen's face flushed. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that the day Thomas died, he was distracted. Rode out to check cattle when he should have stayed back. His mind was elsewhere. On you, on marriage, on plans." Moss stepped closer. "Some folks might wonder if that distraction cost him his life." "That's insane." "Is it?" His voice hardened. "Beautiful woman writes desperate letters to a lonely man. Gets him twisted up. Then he dies, and suddenly she's got claim to his property. I don't want his property." "Then sign this." He held out the paper. Simple document saying you renounce any claim to Thomas Kemp's estate. Sign it, and I'll make sure no one questions your character. Refuse. He shrugged. Well, people talk, especially about women who arrive with nothing and leave with everything. Behind them, Cody appeared, hammer still in hand. Moss. Walton. Vernon's smile returned. Just handling some business. Handle it somewhere else. Miss Richardson and I aren't finished. Yes, you are. Cody's voice was quiet but absolute. Get off my land. Moss straightened his coat, eyes cold. This isn't over. People deserve to know what kind of woman you're sheltering. He climbed into his wagon and drove off, leaving dust and poison in his wake. Gwen stood frozen, shame and rage battling in her chest. Don't, Cody said quietly. Don't what? Don't believe him. He met her eyes. Whatever he's planning, we'll face it. But you're not alone in this. By Sunday, the whole town knew. Gwen felt at the moment they walked into the Spearville Church, a small wooden building with windows that rattled in the wind. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Eyes tracked her movement down the aisle. Women leaned toward each other, whispering behind gloved hands. Cody walked beside her, steady as always, but even he couldn't shield her from the weight of their stares. They sat in the third pew. Floyd and Bertie settled beside them, Bertie's hand finding Gwen's and squeezing once firm. Reverend Samuel Copper was a tall man with silver hair and a voice that filled the small space without effort. His sister Dorothy sat in the front row, spine straight, eyes sharp as a hawk's. The sermon was about mercy, about judgment, about how Christ broke bread with sinners and tax collectors while the righteous stood outside pointing fingers. Gwen wondered if anyone caught the irony. After the service, most people filed out without speaking. But Ruth and Porter, the general store owner's wife, stopped directly in front of Gwen, blocking her path. Miss Richardson. Her voice was cold, polite. I heard you were engaged to Thomas Kemp. Yes, ma'am. And now you're living on Cody Walton's ranch. Interesting how quickly arrangements change. Gwen felt her face heat. Mr. Walton offered me work. I'm sure he did. Ruth's smile was razor thin. Though some might question the propriety of a young woman living under the same roof as a widower, especially one who arrived under such convenient circumstances. That's enough. Dorothy Copper appeared like a storm front, her voice cutting through the tension. Ruth, and if you've got something to say it plain or keep walking. Ruth's mouth tightened. I'm simply concerned about the kind of example. The kind of example is Christian charity, Dorothy said flatly, which seems to be in short supply this morning. Now move along before I tell my brother you've been watering down the communion wine donations. Ruth paled and hurried off. Dorothy turned to Gwen. Don't let these vultures pick at you. Half of them married for less romantic reasons than you had, and the other half wouldn't last a week in your shoes. Thank you, Gwen whispered. Don't thank me yet. Moss is spreading poison faster than gospel. Dorothy's eyes narrowed. But poison only works if you let it in. You hold your head up, girl. Make them choke on their own gossip. Outside, Cody waited by the wagon, ignoring the stares. When Gwen climbed up beside him, he said quietly, You all right? No, she admitted. But I will be. He nodded once, then clicked the reins. As they rolled away from town, Gwen looked back at the church, at the faces still watching from the steps. She'd survived worse than small-town judgment. She'd survived this too. The accusations are spreading. Moss isn't finished, and Gwen's past is about to collide with her present in ways she never expected. Subscribe now to see how a woman with nothing but her name fights back against a town that's already decided she's guilty, and discover whether Cody Walton will stand beside her when the storm truly breaks. The blizzard hit on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after Christmas. Snow came sideways across the prairie, turning the world white and howling. Cody and Floyd worked frantically to get the cattle into the north pasture's windbreak, while Gwen and Bertie secured the chickens and hauled extra firewood inside. By evening, they were snowed in. The four of them huddled in the main room, the fire roaring, wind screaming outside like something alive and angry. Storm like this, you just wait it out, Floyd said, sipping coffee spiked with whiskey. Could last 2 days, could last a week. It lasted 3. On the second day, Bertie asked Gwen to organize the storage room off the kitchen, a cramped space filled with crates, old tools, and boxes of papers Cody hadn't touched since his wife died. "Just make sense of it," Bertie said. "Man lives in the past too long. He forgets there's a future." Gwen worked slowly, sorting receipts and livestock records, trying not to intrude on memories that weren't hers. Most of it was mundane: bills of sale, feed orders, a few letters from Cody's late wife, Annalie, that made Gwen's chest ache with their simple, domestic sweetness. Then she found the trunk. It was pushed into the corner, half hidden under a canvas tarp. Inside were Thomas Kemp's belongings, things that must have been brought here after his death, maybe by Moss himself for safekeeping. Gwen's hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Clothes, a pocket watch, a Bible with his name inscribed inside, and beneath it all, a leather portfolio tied with string. She shouldn't look. It wasn't hers, but something made her open it anyway. Letters. She dug deeper, found another letter, this one in different handwriting, smoother, more practiced. A forgery. "Dear Miss Richardson, I eagerly await your arrival. The preparations are nearly complete. December 24th cannot come soon enough. Yours truly, Thomas Kemp." But it wasn't Kemp's handwriting. She'd seen enough of his letters to know. It was Vernon Moss's. The storm outside intensified, but Gwen barely heard it. Her mind raced, piecing together the truth. Moss had intercepted Kemp's cancellation, had forged new letters to ensure she'd come, had needed her here, desperate, isolated, easy to manipulate, so he could paint her as a schemer and claim Kemp's share of the grazing lease without question. She'd never been wanted. She'd been bait. Gwen didn't sleep that night. She sat by the dying fire, the forged letters spread across her lap like evidence at a trial. Every word Moss had spoken replayed in her mind, each accusation now revealed as projection. He was the schemer, not her. When Cody came down before dawn to stoke the fire, he found her still sitting there. "You've been up all night," he said quietly. She looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "I found something." He sat down across from her, listening without interruption as she explained. The trunk, the letters, the forgery. When she finished, his jaw was tight, hands clenched. "He set you up," Cody said flatly. "Brought you here to discredit you, so no one would question him taking everything. I was never anything but a pawn." Her voice cracked. "Kemp didn't even want me at the end. That's not your shame. That's Moss's. But how do I prove it?" She gestured at the letters. "He'll say I forged these, that I'm lying. It'll be his word against mine. And he's got money, reputation, and you've got the truth." Cody leaned forward. "We take this to Reverend Copper, to the land office in Dodge City. We make him answer for it publicly. He'll destroy me first. Not if we move fast." The storm broke the next morning. By noon, the trails were passable. Cody hitched the wagon while Gwen carefully packed the letters in a leather satchel. Floyd insisted on coming. For backup, he said, checking his rifle, and Bertie pressed a package of food into Gwen's hands. "You bring that bastard down," Bertie said fiercely. "Don't let him make you small." They reached Dodge City by evening. Reverend Copper met them at his sister Dorothy's house, lamplight casting shadows across his weathered face as he examined the letters. "This is fraud," he said finally. "Clear as day." "Will anyone believe it?" Gwen asked. Dorothy snorted. "They will when I'm through with them. I've got enough dirt on half this town to bury Moss twice over." "We need to confront him," Cody said. "Publicly. At the land office with witnesses." Reverend Copper nodded slowly. "I'll gather the right people. Day after tomorrow. That give you enough time?" Gwen thought about the months of whispers, the shame she'd carried like a brand. About Thomas Kemp, who'd died before he could make things right. About Moss, who'd orchestrated it all without a shred of remorse. "Yes," she said. "That's enough time." But that night, as she lay awake in Dorothy's spare room, doubt crept in. What if Moss had more tricks? What if exposing him made everything worse? Was she come all this way just to lose again? The Dodge City land office was packed. Word had spread fast. Dorothy had made sure of it. Ranchers, merchants, church folk, even the marshal stood witness as Vernon Moss arrived, confident as ever in his fine coat and polished boots. He faltered when he saw the crowd. "What's all this about?" Moss demanded, looking at the land clerk. Reverend Copper stepped forward. This is about Thomas Kemp's estate, and a fraud committed in his name. Moss's face hardened. I don't know what lies Miss Richardson has been spreading. Not lies. Gwen rose from her seat, the leather satchel in her hands. Truth, written in your own hand. She placed the letters on the clerk's desk. The forged correspondence. Kemp's unfinished cancellation. The evidence laid bare. The clerk examined them carefully, comparing handwriting samples from Kemp's filed documents. His face grew grim. Mr. Moss, he said slowly, these signatures don't match. That's absurd. In this letter, the clerk held up Kemp's cancellation, clearly shows he intended to end the arrangement with Miss Richardson before his death. Moss's jaw worked. She could have written that herself. In Kemp's handwriting, Dorothy Coppa's voice cut through the room. From inside a trunk that's been in your possession since his death? Try again. The crowd murmured. Heads turned toward Moss. You forged those letters, Gwen said, her voice steady now, no longer trembling. You brought me here knowing I'd be desperate, friendless. You planned to discredit me, so no one would question you taking Kemp's share of the grazing lease. You can't prove. The handwriting proves it, Cody said from beside her. And your threats prove intent. Moss looked around the room, seeing his escape routes closing. His face flushed red, then pale. Thomas was going to buy me out. He finally spat. Said he wanted sole ownership. Would have left me with nothing after 20 years of partnership. I built that operation as much as he did. So you used me, Gwen said quietly. You were nobody, some desperate woman from back east. Who would have believed you anyway? His voice cracked with bitterness. He was going to take everything, and I needed leverage. The room went silent. The marshal stepped forward. Vernon Moss, you're under arrest for fraud and forgery. As they led Moss away, still protesting, still justifying, Gwen felt something loosen in her chest. Not joy. The victory was too hollow for that. But relief. The truth was out. Her name was clear. Outside, the Kansas wind blew cold and clean. Cody stood beside her on the wooden sidewalk, hat in his hands. What now? He asked. Gwen looked down Front Street, at the prairie beyond, at the vast empty spaces she'd once feared. They didn't seem empty anymore. They seemed full of possibility. Now I go home, she said. To Pennsylvania. She turned to him, really looked at him. This man who'd bought her supper when she had nothing, who'd offered her work without asking for her story, who'd stood beside her when the whole town whispered. No, she said. To Spearville. To your ranch. She paused. If you'll have me, not as hired help, as whatever we might become. Cody's weathered face broke into a slow smile. I like that very much. They rode back together as the sun set over the prairie, painting the snow gold and pink. And for the first time since stepping off that train, Gwen Richardson felt something she'd stopped believing in. Home. But a cleared name is just the beginning. What happens when spring comes? When the past she fled catches up. When Cody and Gwen must decide if survival can become something more. Subscribe now to follow their journey. From desperate strangers to partners building a life in the unforgiving Kansas prairie. Because some love stories don't start with romance. They start with a plate of food and the courage to stay. Subscribe for now for stories of heart, goodwill, and compassion in the old Wild West, just like this one.
If you enjoyed this story, we appreciate you a whole lot and look forward to connecting with you as we build a community on this channel. Every day, we will put out more stories, so we need your support. Help us by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel if you haven't already. You won't miss any new exciting videos. Check out the next video. You'll love it.